Hello! Welcome to Philosophy, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Poffo Ortiz, Slattery, George Ortega, Juris, and I guess that's all of us. Okay, and what we're going to be talking about is part of it is how we all have similar goals. Like, we all have ways in which we want to make the world a better place. We want to reduce suffering. We want equality. We want a world of less hatred, more love. All these basic things that we agree on. And sometimes we just disagree about what's the most important method. We each have our own methods. Different co-hosts will advocate different methods that might improve the world. It might be telling the world that free will is an illusion, or it might be getting rid of religion, or it might be making changes in politics, or moving to a resource-based economy. Many of these ideas we brought up on previous shows, and I think it's an open question, two open questions, honestly, that we can all discuss. First of all, what is the fundamental ethic, the motivation or desire that underlies all of these different avenues we pursue? And second, which of these methods scientifically, demonstrably, is the most effective at making a better world? So, we all have our opinions, and so who'd like to start?
Well, Papa, why don't you start? You introduced it.
Okay. What I was saying before we started the broadcast was essentially that we all have our different methodology. We all have our different takes on how to make the world a better place, how to improve the quality of life for all, how to improve the living conditions of humans and non-human animals alike. And we each have our own specific approach to this, and it's almost like our own little doctrine that we've sort of established, because in our minds, we kind of see the consequences, and we see the cause and effect, and we've sort of relegated it all to one thing. And I've said many times, like, for example, if we got rid of religion, if we got rid of the money, if we got rid of the ability for human beings to reproduce, those three things literally would solve all the problems in the world, and we could move forward. But essentially, like what Chandler is saying, is there is a core value system. There's a core ethic or an ideal that we're all working from. We want to see people happy. We want to minimize suffering. We want to make things better. We want to contribute, and we want the human race to progress and evolve. So what is the most expedient route to doing that? And so I like to go around the room, so to speak, and just really quickly say what we think the problem is and what we think the solution is for each of us. And then at the end, if we could do this, quickly enough, then we could say, okay, now which methodology doesn't mean anybody's wrong, doesn't mean anybody is 100% right. I think we're all right on a certain level, but what is the most beneficial? What is the most
all right, let me
effective way to go about doing this?
Yeah, let me get. Basically, when we say that we want to create a better world, a fairer world, a kinder world, all these things, better, fairer, kinder, they would serve to make people happier, to make people suffer less, right? So, back in the late 70s, early 80s, this guy, Michael Fordyce, was a pioneer in psychology. He developed the first program to teach people how to become happier. So to get very direct, very specific, if schools throughout the world started teaching, kindergarten kids, first grade, K through 12, how to be happy, how to relate to each other, this extremely important life skill, I guarantee that within a generation, this place will be so much more, happy, not just happy, but fair, and the world would be so much better just by that one action.
I don't disagree with you at all, George, but that approach would not work in the current system that we have, because it's a monetary economic system. It's monetary incentive. Everything is about survival. There is structural violence built into the system itself, as Peter Joseph would say.
But if you're describing the current system as run by money, I think money doesn't want anything to change. And money, in other words, there's a vested interest in the people who control the world to keep that control. So in other words, that argument could apply to anything we can come up with.
But what I'm trying to say is your approach is not practical right now because of the powers that be. So we would have to
I hear
essentially
you, but Papa,
deconstruct those powers.
Papa, all right. So then, are you saying that the answer to, because like that same argument you use that the powers that be wouldn't allow that, you can use to anything we would say, like to overcome the free will myth, to overcome religious influence. So then, are you saying that that overcoming the powers of be is this, most expedient, best way to
it would be if we had the means and the tools to do that. But since the general populace and you put all the scientists and philosophers together, we don't have that power. Since we're still in a monetary system, I'm trying to say that it's not going to work. So we would need to take a different route. If we could if we could deconstruct and throw down, big pharma and, big business and the central banking system and the corporate America and, this global elite, if we could, dismantle their power structure by getting rid of the monetary system, then yes, we could focus on that. But we're not in the position to do that right now. So all I'm saying is it's not that you're wrong. I'm just saying we have to take a different approach at this point right now. And that's why my approach
I hear what you're saying, Papa,
is through philosophy and changing a person's
my question is
ethics and values.
I hear you. My question is then, let's say we accept that. My question is, let's cut to the chase. And then, do you have an idea of a way that would make the world better that doesn't require the powers that be to accept it, to allow it?
Yes. And it's by fundamentally changing the human perspective on life and nature, on their own, on existence itself. That if we can recognize what we really are, if we could recognize what this experience really is, if we could recognize what other biological organisms actually represent, if we could teach that and promote it, and it's instilled in people, this is something we can do without legislation. We do this behind the scenes on the sidelines. We do this in our homes. We do this in our meetup groups. It's not something that we need necessarily financial. It's not necessarily something that we need money for. We can just do it just by what we're doing right now, by the process of sharing information, of educating others, and we can do that through the internet. It's the fastest, easiest way to do it. And so what I'm saying is, hold on to what you propose, but if we really, we know that we don't have time. We're in a crisis right now. We're in an economic, ecological, environmental, state of emergency, so to speak, with climate change, with the power structures, with our human health. I mean, all of it. It goes back to a couple core issues. So all I'm saying is you got to change people's philosophy. You got to change them from the inside out, not from the outside in. And, keep on working on the bliss pill and keep on working on a way to just, it's not that your logic is not flawed in that the idea of everyone being happy, so we'll be more fulfilled and we'll work together and there's more cooperation. But there's no way to do that right now. We don't live in the equilibrium world. Like, remember the science fiction movie with Christian Bale? That's all about exactly what you're talking about.
Let me challenge that. In today's world, the most important issue, and it is an issue that's not just about making the world better. It's about the survival of civilization, climate change. I mean, we're at the point where people have been trying to get that message through, trying to, without legislation, summon up that public awareness and that public champion of it. And the powers that be have systematically, through disinformation, just completely destroyed that initiative.
Because we can agree on this because of selfishness, right? Because they're thinking about their little plot of land, their span of life,
right.
Their children. They're going to be safe.
Question, I know. So we agree on that. So my question to you is what specifically are you stating that what information would be presented that they wouldn't see as a threat to their interests?
No. It's not. No. We won't succeed in changing them. what we will succeed in is educating a whole new generation.
No, I know that.
And get the
Poffo,
mass of people.
It's not about educating them. In other words, like, they don't want the science of climate change to be promoted and popularized, because that's going to, like, be against their interests. What message do you want other people to receive that they're going to perceive is not also against their interests?
There won't be a message that there won't be any kind of positive change that they're gonna comply with. There just has to be a critical mass of people who think and feel and act this way until we get to the point where we literally overthrow the government. There needs to be a revolution, a cultural revolution of understanding and like a synthesis of the highest ideals based on science and biology and logic and reason that overrides all the cultural biases and the selfishness and the greed, because we're fundamentally seeing each other as all parts of one whole instead of segregated and specialized, individualized forms. If we see each other as one being, like I'm trying to do right now on this podcast, I'm not sure if I'm doing it successfully, but I'm trying to recognize we each have our perspective, and those perspectives aren't bad, like the different fingers on a hand or different parts of your body, and we need to come together and coalesce and work as one in a unified fashion. Otherwise, nothing's going to work. We're always at odds with each other. The hand can't say to the foot, I don't need you. The eye can't say to the mouth, I don't need you. They're all significant parts of this gigantic organism, is what I'm saying. And so if we can educate the masses in that understanding and actually prove it to them and show them biologically, scientifically, how our DNA is identical to the tree, and how each one of it, we have a lineage that can be traced all the way back to the Big Bang, that we are coming from the same source. And if you go, further down the line, from the same early hominids, and going back and forth from the same, microorganisms, the same single-celled bacteria. So we're all one body, is what I'm trying to say. And that seems abstract, but think about it. You don't treat other parts of your body with disrespect, and you don't disregard one part in favor of the other. You recognize that they all work together. That's the fundamental message. But I'm not even talking about trying to teach those who are in positions of power and government authority, because to me they're a lost cause. We need to focus on those who are active, who are available, who can make a difference right now, like the younger generation.
Yeah, and I think I agree with both of you guys, really, in a lot of ways. And see, here's the interesting case, because there is a difference between, like, when proposing a solution that would make the world a better place, there's a difference between what works great in theory as opposed to what is practically achievable. And my question, actually, and this is interesting, is my question is whether either of those things are achievable, whether making everybody happier, or teaching that we're all part of one body, one organism, one universe. I mean, both of those are good things, but can either of them be done? And that is the question that remains unanswered, I think.
Well, no. I mean, teaching people to be happier. There's exhaustive experimentation that says it's possible. So that's, it's like, it's not a theory. It's already being done. Now the question is, like, will the powers of be allow it? And the other question is, like, will people, be enlightened enough to understand that by teaching their kids to be happier, we'll create a better world? Not just teaching their kids, teaching everybody.
And from my perspective, it's absolutely feasible as well, because if you were to look at this in if it's analogous to a religion forming, sort of a spiritual worldview, a religious movement, I mean, we see how powerful the solidarity is within the Christian community, within the Jewish community. The Islamic culture is literally dominating the globe right now because of a ridiculous book, and they have some culture. They have cultures and customs and traditions, and that is so influential because it's tapping into these universal needs.
Let's hear what Trick and Yuri have to say about this so far.
Sure.
Yuri, you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Where should I start? Okay, first things before we try changing anyone else or any system or political system or religion. I think we should try and change ourselves. And one of the things I heard and sort of basically didn't particularly agree, my argument would be rather than sort of give up on searching for happiness, in the sense that the fact that we look for happiness and can't find it, and at that point we become unhappy because we've had a search and we couldn't find it. And I was sort of listening, it sounded to me like a very American or US-centric type argument. Come to Canada, you'll be happy. It was a joke.
Yuri, but wait a minute, Yuri, across the world in surveys of hundreds of thousands of people, when psychologists ask people, what do you most want from life? The number one answer is always happiness. When they ask, what do you want most for your kids? The number one answer is always happiness.
Yeah. And
I didn't hear everything that Yuri said, but I think I understand his train of thought, that it's more of the Buddhist tradition that eliminate the desire and then you eliminate the unhappiness. Is that correct?
Well, no, the Buddhist philosophy based on the Four Noble Truths is about eliminating suffering, which is the inverse of creating greater happiness. He's just saying the reverse, but it's all about happiness.
Okay, and the second point I wanted to make is, so the question, is the planet getting better or not? If you read somebody like Steven Pinker and he takes a look at violence in the world, his argument and his data, so I haven't personally read it, but so a little bit I've seen of it, is actually we're living in the least violent times in all our history, at least on a per capita basis. The absolute numbers are bigger, but on a per capita basis, we're living in the most peaceful times ever.
Yuri, I would agree with you. I would agree with you if you exactly. That's my point also.
Not for non-human animals. Maybe in human societies, I believe we have sort of progressively as a whole evolved, and we're much more civilized than we were 500 years ago. But not in terms of our universal ethic, because of how we are still treating other life forms and the planet.
60 billion farm animals a year.
And my question to that is, so what? So we could have a supernova tomorrow and all suffering will come to an end.
A what tomorrow? A what?
We could have a supernova tomorrow, and within 24 hours,
or we could, or the world can continue. The world could continue on. So just because there might be a natural disaster or some gigantic extinction event, does that mean? How does that? That's like a red herring, man. How does that make it? How does that make it any less harmful or atrocious what we do to other life forms? Just because I might get killed, I might get hit by a car tomorrow, so that means I shouldn't be kind today because I might die tomorrow.
And you can apply that to human beings. So what? Yeah. Why should we care how we treat a human being?
Well, yeah, that's my question too. Now, when violence is being done to other human beings, does Yuri go, so what? Does he do that with other humans, or is this just with other animals?
I'm not saying so what. I take a very hedonistic point of view to it, and so basically, if there's excessive violence, then end of the day, I'm going to suffer. I'm going to have an unstable society, and so basically, my quality of life will go down. So I'm taking a very hedonistic, taking a good close look at my wants and wishes and desires, and trying to fulfill them in the most rational way possible.
That's funny because I'm not thinking about myself at all. Literally everything I do is for the sake of others, for the sake of the planet, for the sake of all of humanity and every other organism. It's interesting. I mean, yeah, I guess I will benefit as well. It's kind of like being vegan. You benefit in terms of health and stuff like that, but that's not why I became vegan. It was for the ethical reasons. So it's like, okay, that doesn't mean that you're an immoral person. You may be a very ethical person. I think you are a very ethical, decent human being.
I try to be very amoral.
Sure. Well, okay, let's not use the word. Let's not use those words. But let's just say you may be a very decent, civilized, evolved human being. But other people who also are following their hedonistic imperative or looking at it, what's in it for them, that's exactly why the world is the way it is, because they're only thinking about themselves, like a cancer cell that is just exponentially growing and growing and devouring everything in its path. It's not recognizing, this gets back to my point, it's not recognizing that it's part of a larger system. If we recognize that we're part of a larger system, we won't exploit and dominate and control and abuse the other aspects of that system.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's like you have to combine the happiness with the understanding that others are literally an extension of you. Because if each person just goes with what makes them happier without regard to other people, that's exactly what we have going on in the world now that causes the problems in the first place.
All right, so Trick, what's your take?
My ideal
Trick,
world,
I haven't heard from Trick yet.
My ideal world would consist of three things, basically. A concern over equality, so everybody is concerned over not just themselves, but they'd include themselves in that, but they'd be concerned over the welfare equality of all conscious creatures, including animals. So that would be my ideal world. And the second part to that is the concern over critical thinking, because you can't think about certain aspects or how to better the world without being able to think critically. So
I think we're all in agreement. And when you say critical thinking, you mean in contrast to irrational, emotional thinking. Is that right, Trick?
Correct. I mean, the first part was the irrational, emotional part. Not irrational, but the first part is the you have a concern, you have a, I guess, empathy, you have those type of things. You have a concern over equality. Yeah. The second part is, and when you're talking about concerns, you're talking about something. You're talking about a valuation, a value that's already inside of a person. So it's not. You can't really rationally determine our value. You have to invoke that into people, either through education or showing inconsistencies where their emotions have cognitive dissonance and things like that. You have to kind of invoke that into
maybe
people.
Like street epistemology. Find out why, help a person see their illogical, irrational belief systems and how what leads them to.
So some people might say, oh, it's horrible that people kill dogs, in China, because they have pets that are dogs, but yet they have no concern over pigs and cows because they're just accustomed to that parsing of reality. Right. So if you can show that there's really no distinction there, that
goes along with my approach as well. Absolutely. Of seeing all life as holding intrinsic value. So real quick, Trick, I'm going to agree with you, but real quick. So if you were to summarize it, what's wrong with the world and what's your solution? Just in a sentence.
Well, I don't have here's the thing. I don't think there's one specific solution. I think we have to attack these things from many different ways. So one person could attack it by getting angry, for example, even though as no free will advocates, we don't really promote that, but some people will be convinced by certain mechanisms. Other people will be convinced by other mechanisms.
So I think the approach. Yeah, that's the approach, sort of like what approach.
No,
you take. Really
Trick, I think you hit on it. Trick, I think you hit on it. In other words, you have this motivated reasoning. People are like guided by their emotions, by their self-interest, by these beliefs. And I think when you said that, while it's not the complete answer, certainly, I think the first step may be to teach people how to think critically. Because to the extent people know how to think, how to figure things out logically, then I think they'll much more easily come to the conclusion that a happier world for everyone translates to a happier world for them.
Not if they're raised in a culture of religious
it could be a logical argument that's introduced to them. It's something that it's the first step in people getting things,
I
whether
agree.
it's science
I agree,
or philosophy
but I don't think it's
or
practical.
religion.
I agree, but it's not practical because people are raised and they're completely inculcated in these archaic belief systems and these fundamentalist, traditional mindsets that teach that we're above the animals, that teach that there's the lost and the saved, and that this world is only temporary, and we're just passing through, and God's going to burn up the world and make a new world.
Religion, centuries ago, religion was the only system of thought available. Then, like the age of enlightenment, the scientific revolution, it totally upended that. So now 50% of at least Americans reject the Garden of Eden thing in favor of evolution. I mean, logic and reason and science has been hugely influential in upending this religious, non-scientific and logical
depends on where you go. I mean, they voted for Trump. Remember, like you go through all the red states. Think about it, man. Like literally go through the Bible Belt in the South. I mean, what you're talking about doesn't exist there. It's like, give me my guns, give me my steak, and give me the Bible because I'm a good American.
You got to understand the Trump vote was also people. The Trump vote was also people just completely fed up with the establishment.
Let's not talk about Trump. Let's not talk about Trump. No Trump.
It wasn't about Trump. It was about like populism. It was about people like Clinton represented the establishment, like more of the same, more of Obama, more of the other Bushes. The vote for Trump was to a great extent the vote for something completely different.
This is completely unrelated, but my girlfriend thinks you sound like Clinton, George. I just wanted to throw that out there. She always says you sound just like Bill Clinton.
That's funny. That's funny. He deeply disappointed me. I thought he was going to do a lot more back in the 90s. I campaigned for him.
So, I don't. I still think I could still. I stand my ground, and I still say all of this can be traced back to biology and a more rational perspective, as Trick would say, a deeper awareness of our place, in the ecosystem, of our position as human beings, as highly evolved, primates on this planet.
But Poffo, how are you going to if people don't learn how to think, which is what Trick was proposing, how are they going to appreciate your message? That message of we're all one and stuff.
If they don't know how to think, you have to teach them that what they're thinking is self-destructive and damaging, and it goes against their own personal. It goes against their own.
But you were arguing against the possibility that in today's world that's not possible because people voted for Trump and people are like
because of the powers that be, because of the power structures that exist. But there are movements all across this nation and really all around the world right now. There are very positive, significant, compassion-driven movements that are 100% for clean energy and renewable resources, and veganism is extremely influential and powerful now. And you have the environmentalist movement, and you have the atheist movement, and you have secular humanism, and you have all of these counterculture, sort of revolutionary concepts that are coming about, and they're all converging and they're expanding and they're growing exponentially because of the advent of the internet. We have instant access to communication and information, and we're able to spread these messages like wildfire, like never before. So all that's necessary is a distilling of all these most important ideals into one unified movement that people can latch onto and say, hey, that makes sense. That's what I'm already doing over here. But this holds promise to make it better for everybody, and it doesn't address just one aspect, doesn't address just one problem. It's actually holistic. It actually makes the most sense. We have to create this, and people will follow. It'll be like a magnet. Everyone will just cling to it, and they'll jump on the bandwagon in a good way.
Poffo, back a few centuries ago, in the age of enlightenment, the French philosophers, they thought, my God, we finally got it. We've got the age of reason. Now we can understand things not according to belief, not according to what somebody said, but according to logic and reason. And unfortunately today, as
what happened? They got outbred. The religious cultures, like Mexicans, Hispanics, like the Armenians, the people who are the most fundamentally ass backwards and under-evolved are reproducing faster than the rational, logical people. So
they're the idiocracy movie. No, that hasn't happened. What has happened is that, like, as Chris
I never
Mooney
saw that
explained,
movie, by the way.
as Chris Mooney explained in his book, The Republican Brain, is like what we're discovering now that they didn't understand in the age of enlightenment, in the age of reason, is that most people decide their political decisions, their choices, not based on reason, but based on emotional concerns, or what's known as motivated reasoning, that have nothing to do with reason. So it's not.
Right. But again, because they're not being taught critical thinking skills at a very early age, because they're being indoctrinated into cultural traditions that don't serve humanity.
And Poffo, that's why I'm saying Trick is right, that, like, teaching critical skills is the first step. Without it, what else can be done?
Yeah, so even in high school, for example, you teach people math, you teach people the social sciences, you teach people English, in science, basically. Those are the big ones. But I'm saying that critical thinking should be up there with those. It should be one of the first things that we teach in high schools, for how to distill information, how to not think contradictory, how to
question authority, and
what is a fallacy? Why are what is a fallacious thinking?
But again, what you're up against, Trick. You understand that you're in opposition to that. They go home and they're learning, the religious ceremonies and the rituals, and their parents and their and their families, and even their own pursuit of materialism and success and fame. This is a multifaceted problem. I mean, we're literally talking about what's wrong with the world. We do have to take a multi-layered approach. But I'm saying there are certain fundamental things that, if attacked and dismantled, will open up the doorways for progress and evolution like never before.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We got to understand that the information era is about 20 to 30 years old. Like the high-speed internet connections weren't available 40 years ago. People didn't have access to all the information that we have access today. So it's really it's not that long of an occurrence that the information era has just began, basically. So we just started on this path. And we already see the progression, though. We already see that people are more agnostic than they were in the past, for example. Because of the information that's out there, and they can see that information where they couldn't see it before. So I think generationally this is going to progress, I think, exponentially, really.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that we're seeing progress in many of these areas that all you guys are talking about. It's just not as fast as we would like, but we are seeing an increase in that. That's what I'd have to say about that.
Here's my take. I think we've got to be careful about the language we use. Like I heard Poffo say, human beings are more evolved. No, they're not.
Right.
So be very, very careful about that language.
When I say that, I mean specifically in terms of ethics, and morality, and the ability to think and make cognitive decision making using the frontal lobe think and ruminate.
Poffo,
and
even
reason.
with that, in terms of ethics, we're the most good, but we're also the most evil.
Right, but we're the most evil, and we're the most destructive because we have the greatest capacity to manipulate our environment. We have the greatest.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, by evolved we mean evolving toward morality. If we're the most evil, I'm not sure we can make that argument that we're the most evolved.
Because right now, at this moment, it's a weird paradox. At this moment, we really are capable of the greatest atrocities and the greatest good. It's both simultaneously right now, which has never been like this in the history of our species. That we can literally destroy the planet, or we could save the planet, and we can coalesce and unite and work together like never before.
But then again, if the universe is unfolding, sort of either deterministically or probabilistically or even indeterministically, it could be no other way.
Correct. But communication and things like that is all happens deterministically.
Okay.
So our convincing others, for example, either it'll happen or it won't. Either we will make it so we can convince future generations to care about the welfare of everyone else and make the world a better place, or something will happen and that won't pan out basically.
Yeah,
but it's all
I still want to go
way.
around. I still want to go around the room and just make a sentence. So, like, what would you do? What's the problem, and what would you do to fix it? That's what I'd like to do, but it's up to you guys. I know it's complex. I know it's multifaceted.
Teach the kids to be happy in a generation. You're going to have a really, really wonderful world.
Okay, Trick.
I don't know. I know we have to attack it from multiple angles. That's all I know. We have to.
But if you could narrow it down, if you could summarize it in just one.
And one word is just educate. Educate, basically. Educate.
Well, educate what?
Critical thinking, and hopefully instill a concern over the welfare of conscious creatures, basically.
Okay, Yuri?
I think we live in an amazing universe. I think it's just amazing where we are. So to use a Trumpism, this is really bigly. So I must admit, what I would do is, in a sentence, is just be careful about how we divide. So if we believe in a lack of free will, it implies we have a monistic universe, and all the language I'm hearing is a language of dualism or pluralism, philosophically speaking. Start trying to be aware of all the dualisms we have. We're swapping one religious dualism for a materialist dualism.
You were breaking up a little bit there, but I'm not sure if you guys heard him. But I think it's a good point. So essentially, he's saying we really need to restructure our language, because our linguistics and our terminology has a big influence, has an effect on how we act, how we interact, and how we view the world. I mean, is that accurate?
Yuri, could you explain that in more detail?
Yeah, well, like what are you suggesting is dualistic, I guess?
Do away with the dualism, the dualistic language, the dualistic terms, so that we're speaking on.
Give an example of what it looks like when you do away with that. Like, what do you get?
For example, you don't talk in terms of better or good or bad.
Why?
You see, in the sense that you do away with morality itself.
Well, then you've got anarchy.
Like this,
No,
didn't you guys
you don't
devote a
have
whole show
anarchy.
to this? You guys, like, your first show was about this, about doing away with morality and the language and stuff. You got to be careful right now, George. He's not saying do away with helpful or harmful actions. He's saying in terms of the way we look at things, the way we think. We need to see things.
I understand what he's saying, but like, for example, if he's saying do away with good and evil, where our whole criminal justice system is predicated on understanding the difference between good and evil.
Exactly. And basically that's a leftover from religion.
And if we do away with our legal system, that's
we don't.
Anarchy.
No, we don't.
Well, let's understand this like about the real world. In the real world, there are states of being that are better and worse. I think for example, I think the worst misery for everybody, as Sam Harris would put it, would be worse than the best pleasure for everybody. Right?
I just watched that lecture.
It's just a fundamental truth. I mean that it would be a better state for the most pleasure for everybody than the worst misery for everybody. And we can kind of go up the scale from there. We could say, well, if the worst misery for everybody is worse than the best pleasure for everybody, then we can understand that and try to align with what would be better along the moral landscape, as he calls it.
But what you're really meaning is, so what would be more effective to get your desired outcome?
Well, what would be better for the conscious
don't use
creatures?
the word better. Try using the word be more effective. That's what you're saying.
Well, no. I mean, because the reason it's better is because when something is suffering, it's an inherent intrinsically negative state. It's something that exists.
It's not intrinsically negative at all. It's the way your brain has been shaped.
Right. Well, that doesn't matter. Terms. The way it's shaped doesn't matter. That of the fact that it is intrinsically bad for the creature that has to endure it. So these words bad.
Intrinsically, you're saying your brain has been shaped to think that way, which is fine. Mine's been shaped to think amorally, which is fine.
Your brain has
actually no, Yuri. Like for example, if we asked you whether you prefer to spend the rest of your life being tortured or in a lot of pleasure, I don't believe you'd tell us that you prefer to be tortured for the rest of your life.
And it isn't about preference. The preference isn't what drives the state. So the state exists, and then we prefer that state because it exists. We prefer to move away from the negative state because it's intrinsically negative. So we have.
I disagree with the word intrinsic.
Intrinsic just means that's inherent. Well, intrinsic just means it's inherent in the brain structure.
Guys, this is a quagmire of semantics and language. I know that Yuri's point is that we need new language, but all I wanted to do was let's let him make that point and then let's move on. Let's not talk about we're not getting into the specifics of each approach. We're just trying to sort of define what each of our approaches is. So he puts forward the idea of changing the language structure and looking at things in non-dualistic terms. Okay, we don't have to talk about that specifically, otherwise we'll end up in this, this quagmire of semantics for the rest of the show. So let's move on and stay focused. So we all have our take on it. Okay. Now what I was suggesting was let's see if we can come to a conclusion of how we can meld and merge these approaches, or maybe figure out which one is most practical and efficient. Do you agree?
Sure. How do you start though, because I have no idea how we meld and merge these. But go ahead.
I would say that we meld and merge these by understanding the relevancy of them all, and formulating a methodology that incorporates them all. Which, believe it or not, I've already done.
So when you say a methodology, you mean a way to educate? Is that what you mean by that? By a way to get the information out to people?
No, I mean a style. Yeah, that's absolutely an aspect of it. But first and foremost, this understanding needs to be experienced or embraced. Someone has to have this understanding, or a group of people have to have this understanding. All of our perspectives need to be understood in a holistic fashion, and then there needs to be it needs to be taught in a very systematic and effective way. So what I'm suggesting is, as I said, I agree with all of you guys, but you're all pulling in different directions, and you're all coming at it almost like treating the symptoms or treating just one aspect of an ailment, when any nutritionist or physicist that's worth that's worth the salt is going to say, okay, how are you feeling emotionally? Okay, how are you feeling physically? Okay, what's your diet like? Okay, how are you sleeping? Has anything traumatic gone on in your life lately that's causing you to have this disruption? They're not just going to say, does your foot hurt? And okay, I'll give you something for your foot, and that's it. He's gonna approach it, holistically. And what I'm saying is, no one in the world and no one in this group is approaching things holistically. We're not wrong, but we're all sort of digging our heels in what we think. I mean, except maybe Trick, because he's more agnostic on it. He's saying, well, I don't know. I know it's a combination of things. And I think George is open to saying, what works best. And all I'm saying is it all needs to be incorporated in a unified, format. And actually, Chandler, you never got a chance to.
Poffo, backing up a bit. Hold on. Backing up. Chandler, what was your
that's what I was going to say. Chandler didn't say
right.
anything.
I haven't really had my thing yet. So just to be clear, we're trying to give a short, simple answer to our solution is what we think would fix the world. Is that what we're doing here?
What's wrong with the world? What is the most destructive and detrimental aspect in human society?
No. We didn't deal with that. Just the basic amount. Just what's going to make the world better. That's what we were answering.
No, but it's twofold. It's what do you think is the thing that is we should be most concerned with, and what is your solution to that problem? That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I think ultimately, that that violence and pain is what's really wrong in the world, and the solution that I have for that is everyone only eats plants and doesn't have sex. That's personally my solution. Now, I have to qualify this. Now, hold on, guys. I have to qualify this. An alternative to the not having sex is that all the men on the planet, every single one, just gets a vasectomy like Poffo did. And that will also achieve the goal of human population zero. All human problems are gone because there's no humans. Brilliant.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Chandler, and I wasn't laughing at you, like the absurdity of it. I do agree. But I was just trying to say that's exactly what I was asking for from everybody. I wanted everybody to kind of give a one sentence answer, exactly what he just did.
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Because then we could take all these ideas and form an amalgamation and actually make some progress instead of just talking about each of our own takes on it and arguing with each other about the semantics of it and whose would work best. Let's actually democratically figure it out, like whose approach would actually work best. I would say it's not practical, Chandler, that the world, that the populace as a whole would all become celibate. I would say it is absolutely beneficial that everyone go vegan. That can't be imposed. It needs to be. It's something that needs to sort of happen organically, where people recognize. But I believe that would solve more than half the problems right there. As far as reproduction, I agree. Whether it's celibacy, whether it's getting sterilized, or becoming just more responsible with sex and contraception and prophylactics, that's the answer. But obviously it's not working because of our internal sex drives are too strong. And
I have a few things I would like to say about that. I would like to say that there's actually a fundamental belief system that people have. And I think that religion promotes this idea, but I think that may persist for other reasons too. People have this bizarre belief that they need to pass on their genes and that they need to reproduce.
Sure. Chandler, that's programmed in nature, though. That is the natural imperative, and that's why it's there. And we just need to sort of override it and think more. Yeah.
Well, technically, that's not what's in nature, but.
Oh no! See, me and Trick.
I don't want to get technical here.
Do this. Trick doesn't believe that sex. Okay, just real quick, Trick. You said animals, humans and non-human animals, they don't have sex to reproduce. They just have sex, and then reproduction and procreation is the outcome. And I see there's no difference.
Humans do. Don't get me wrong. Humans do, but other animals in the wild do not. They don't do that.
But they do it. They do it instinctually because that's what's been programmed in them.
They don't instinctually try to reproduce. That's not what they do.
Yeah. Okay. Now hold on. Now Trick tried to correct me on this very topic previously, and I think a little bit of a clarification is needed here. For example, when I've ever said in the past, because I've said this before, that animals have sex for reproduction, I didn't mean that they were all in thinking, I want to reproduce, so I better have sex. I never meant that. I just meant that was sort of, as George would say, sort of an evolutionary purpose. That's the function of why sex exists. Is
no. That's not the function of why it exists either. Like if you understood evolutionary theory, basically the organism that did reproduce will pass on its genes, right? So if it has the genes to do a mechanism that happens to have the reproduction involved within it, then that's what's going to get passed on, that desire to.
Okay, Trick, it's irrelevant. You're like literally splitting hairs, because if you drop a quarter, it's going to fall, and there's going to be an imprint in the sand. One comes after the other. That's causality. You're the big causality guy. like you're just literally talking about causality. So what's the there must be a reason why you're sort of separating
because evolution doesn't try to accomplish a task.
Evolution isn't conscious. Of course not. It's not a conscious process.
That's
well,
what I'm
I
saying.
would disagree with that.
Oh man, here we go.
Okay. Well, Trick,
anyway,
as long as you and I are on the same page, Trick,
here's the argument, guys. If, like, for example, let's say you believe in random mutation in the sense that, like, there are mutations that happen and for no reason at all, right? Aren't you really saying that we haven't detected any kind of reason, that basically there's no observable reason?
There's no truly random mutation. Random mutation just means it's kind of like when you make a photocopy and there's like a scratch or something on the glass and it causes a reproduction error of the original. That's all it is. It's just a reproduction error.
It's
causal.
It's evolution.
It's causal.
Trick, but here's the
causal.
thing: when you say error, Trick, when you say error, you are implying that there's a correct way. So if you're implying that there's a correct way, there has to be a purpose.
It doesn't reproduce the exact same genome structure. So when you have the two genomes that mix, it doesn't reproduce the exact same genome structure.
I know, but
that's the quote error, if you will. But it's
think of the word error. Think of, in other words, like you have like all these like thousands. Hold on, Poffo. Hold on, Chad. You have these, millions of genes reproducing in a certain way, right?
Right.
Then one gene reproduces in a different way, and sometimes people mistakenly consider that a quote unquote error. How can we possibly know that was an error?
I was just using an error as kind of analogy, but it's called a mutation, but it's not when they say random mutation, if you think of it more like a dice roll. Dice aren't truly random. They're physics and all that stuff causes the dice to go to a number 6.
No,
so it's
I know,
not,
but
it's not truly acausal, for example. There's a cause for it.
I know, Trick, we're not arguing causality. We're both on the same side of that. But what we are arguing is, like, did you say that this has no purpose? Whereas, like, if the defense of natural selection and random mutation is that there are quote unquote errors in the replication, then that is basically connoting that there is, like, if there's not an error, there's a correct way, and if there's a correct way, that's purpose.
George.
I would like to offer something here. Now, I would like to get us both back on topic, but also respond to what Trick and George were just talking about. I really don't think the debate over whether nature or evolution has intention or not is something that's going to make or break our things we're advocating to make a better world. I mean, it's interesting hearing them on that, but I think that won't necessarily change anything, because we still need to unite and the things that we're working on in order to make a better world. And so we don't need to all agree on about the mutations and the.
So let's move on. Let's move forward. I have a question I'd like to pose to the group. Is there anything that transpires? Is there anything that goes on? Is there anything you care about or wish to see happen that can't be traced back to our biology?
I don't understand the question.
No, but carry on.
Is there what, Yuri?
Short answer is no.
Obviously, consciousness is a brain, or at least the consciousness that we're aware enough is a brain state, a biological brain state.
Right.
So everything that we're concerned about, it has to do with brain basically processing.
And let's say in a qualitative state, in terms of the quality of existence, is there anything that can't be traced back to biological needs? Or some aspect of human and plant and animal biology.
Yeah, Poffo, if you're talking quality in life, it all boils down to the biological imperative to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Sure. So I think in your own way, you guys are all agreeing with me, right? Correct? So wouldn't you?
I wanted to note that the biology isn't necessarily a good thing. Like it causes all the problems as well.
Sure. but the way to make things better is to fix the biology or to improve the biological states.
Well,
right?
not necessarily.
Or at least
we might want to even move away from the biology. We might want to
sure,
even...
I got that. But for right now, since we're not floating little consciousnesses in jars with synthetic bodies, for right now, the most important thing we can do is meet our biological needs. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, I would say there's nothing apart from biology, and here's an interesting thing now. I have
a further thought, but I'll come back to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, a lot of people who listen to this may actually not believe that. They may believe that they have a spirit or soul that is not biological, and therefore consciousness can exist outside of biology. Now, none of us believe that, but what's interesting is that if that were true, then the solution I would advocate would be to kill everyone so they can just be a consciousness outside of a body.
Okay, so moving along. All I'd like to posit on top of that, since we've reached that fundamental agreement, is how important it is to teach science and biology. How important it is to actually teach people what's going on in their physical structure and what they're made up of and what their needs are, and essentially how important and how this supersedes all the education in how biological organisms function and interact and exist. It should be like our top priority, because think of all the things that go wrong when you don't understand your biology, when you don't understand that it's a consciousness is a state that's coming from the brain, when you don't understand that you do have certain biological imperatives that drive and push you to want to commit acts of sexual activity, like Chandler would say, that we're trying to curtail that in a different way. And for George, it goes back to your biology, because you're experiencing in a sensory way, you're experiencing pleasure and pain, or in a psychological way, you're experiencing pleasure and pain, which goes right back to human biology, anatomy, psychology, the physiology of the human form. So I'm saying, look at how important it is and how necessary it is to teach biology, that we be educated in terms of critical thinking, and that we have this holistic understanding of where all these thoughts and desires and needs are coming from. You agree? Do we all agree on that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. To sum it up, what you're saying is basically the top priority is understanding the behavior of living organisms. That's where it begins, because you can't, unless you understand why we behave as we do, then you can't make any effort to change it.
And I agree, and that's the secondary. Not that it's less important, but that's the secondary takeaway. What?
I wouldn't limit it to living beings. I think we need to understand chemistry, physics, sort of,
right.
And how
I agree.
Scientists interact.
Yeah, I agree. If you don't understand how gravity works, you step off a cliff, you're going to fall and die. If you don't understand the process of entropy, if you don't understand why you're going to age, if you don't understand electromagnetism and strong and weak nuclear force, if you don't understand these fundamental laws of physics, then you're going to be in a world of hurt. But we generally learn these things through our experiences, but they're not stressed and emphasized enough. And I'm saying if they were, we would live in a very different world. But you kind of threw me off there, Chandler, but I was trying to say, to teach the understanding of it, but also to teach the importance of it, because we are biological organisms. First and foremost, it needs to be accepted and understood and embraced, the reality, the fact that we're animals. And so everything we do comes from our animal nature, and that they're always separated.
Everything we do is also chemistry. It's also physics.
Sure.
And sort of separating life from non-life.
Oh no! But Yuri, I think we're more on the same page than you realize, because I believe the entire cosmos is a living organism. Okay, so I agree with you. I believe that we are all inside one gigantic. We are one, infinite living system, and that's what actually needs to be taught. Therefore, we will understand the external aspects of our biology, which is physics. There you go.
Yeah, I think he's just saying that the focus on just biology alone is a mistake. We have to focus on all the sciences, of course.
Sure. But what I meant was, in order to resolve the problems that we face now, in order to improve the quality of life, learning biology should be key. It should be
sure. Biology, neuroscience is key. Behavioral science is key. Psychology is key. There's all these factors that are just as important with each other.
Yeah.
So,
and all those aspects go back to a biological organism that's experiencing those things. So. Yeah, but you can learn about cosmology, you can learn about physics and chemistry, and really not give a shit about other organisms. And so that's why it comes back to, understand biology and recognize the importance that's there and the value of it. And where I would say, something is sacred, it needs to be honored and respected above all else. That's what I mean by that. We should learn all of the, I would say, the external sciences that about non-biological life are absolutely essential. But at the same time, when we're talking about improving the human experience, and we're talking about just evolving and progressing as a species and coexisting and developing a value system that benefits all, that all goes back to biology, man. I mean, you can't escape it.
Right, or trying to resolve the problems with biology. So that's why I don't think looking at it as a good thing is always necessary or always the way to go about things.
Sure. And what Trick is talking about is primitive, primitive nature and the aspects of the natural world that are sort of fundamentally juxtaposed to itself, and is operating, is feeding on itself and causing harm and destruction, and it's chaotic, and so the human element, we have the potential, the capacity to improve. I feel like I've said this so many times this episode. Improve the quality of existence for living organisms, because we have that. Right. We have that power. We have
that would include the animals in the wild, right? So. We don't want to just focus on humans, and we don't want to just focus on what we're causing. For example, in factory farming, we want to also focus on the problems in the wild as well.
We've talked about this. We've talked about this in detail, Trick. But my stance is just that we need to address the harm that we're causing first. That's the least we can do, is address that, and then once human societies are more peaceful and compassionate and empathetic, we can extend that, and do what we can to help the animal kingdom. But how can you help your neighbor down the street? How can you help somebody, across the ocean on another continent if you got to get your shit together first? So that's
hold it, Poffo. I mean, if we accept that there may actually be a governing consciousness that judges us and that considers all life equal, that doesn't hold human beings as better or more to be valued than others, we actually may not be allowed to progress as a humanity until we cultivate this compassion for other beings.
I mean, I won't address the theology. I mean, he's speaking from his pantheistic perspective. I won't address the theology involved there, but I will agree with you. And it's kind of like you just said what I said in a different way, that we need to first cultivate and instill this greater sense of widen our circle of compassion to include all living beings.
Right. I think we do it all simultaneously. We don't have to focus only on one aspect. We can address the problems.
I don't know, Trick. I know where you're coming from, but I don't think that's practical, because look at the mess in cultures and cities and societies. I feel like I'm not saying that we should not seek to minimize suffering and make things better for the animal kingdom, but I'm saying, how do we even, when we can't even when we still have laws protecting people from getting raped, and we have pedophiles and and human trafficking, and there's still so much discrimination and the degradation of women. I just feel like as a whole, like,
well, let's just talk about certain things. Like for example, there was a park where we introduced wolves into the park. Okay, when we did this to increase the environment, basically. But the problem with that is it increases the environment through this mechanism that's a horrible mechanism. So you
and Peter talked about this, didn't you? I mean, it was that study. I think it was in oh crap, I can't think. It was in where Old Faithful is, in the Yellowstone or Yosemite, where they introduced the wolves and it actually balanced out the ecosystem. And you're saying that overall balance
isn't necessarily a good thing. Like
this is a separate. This is a whole.
Okay, we won't get into this. We won't get into this.
I want to, but not now. Yeah. You and Peter are completely juxtaposed when it comes to that, and I'm somewhere in the middle because he thinks that balance of the overall survival of the species is what's most important, and the individuals don't matter. And you're saying no, it's a horrible methodology to try and, because wolves are carnivorous and they're ripping and tearing apart other life forms.
Not that is you create this thriving biosphere that in an area that you don't need it. Like if you needed it for other certain things, then yes, but you don't necessarily need a thriving biosphere in certain areas.
Okay.
You fundamentally question what thriving means. I know you fundamentally question what it means to have a thriving biosphere. If there's still so much killing and starvation and pain and suffering in it, then how is it thriving, right? Like, you're looking at the quality of
right.
life for those organisms. And I agree.
Right.
And there's something to be said when it comes to that I don't think I could ever be this sort of wildlife conservation person that's just photographing and filming, watching the little animals like suffer and starve. It's like watching chimps when they segregate and they beat up and maybe they cannibalize one of their young, and we're just supposed to sit back and, like, observe. Oh, that's nature. Yeah. That's nature's way. And I've always had trouble with that. And it's like, where do you how do you know when to intervene and when to get involved and when to leave it? That's just
part of it, right? That's just part of of what we're talking about here, about how we're going to make the world a better place. And I think, let's just not be species centric here and just, focus on.
I agree. I just think we can't do anything until humans are more loving and compassionate and kind and
but Poffo, right? No. In other words, like, if we just focus on human, for example, let's say climate change, right? Like, we have like this imperative to survive, right? And so, like, if we want our human civilization to thrive, to go with what you're saying, in other words, like, we may need to kind of like become vegan because the factory farm industry is responsible for perhaps 20% of greenhouse gases. So in other words, like, this is like, it's about Gaia theory. It's the idea that we're one ecosystem, and like, if we ignore the plight of other living beings, that might be at our great detriment. Even though, like, in other words, like, yes, there are problems with humanity, but rather than like trying to, let's say, quote unquote, perfect our humanity, we may actually need to lift these other animals' plights, to further our own cause.
Actually, I agree with you, George, and I think on a fundamental level, we just need, we need to be more godly, for lack of a better term. We need to be more beneficent and kind and magnanimous. I absolutely agree, and I agree with you that, like, veganism is the answer to so much of that. That gets back to what I'm saying is that we need a new outlook, man, a new philosophy, like a new way of looking at everything that will motivate and instigate, true acts of kindness. That's where there is no reciprocation or reward or expecting anything back. We're doing it for we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it because we're all in this together.
Poffo, I think we need an acceptance that mankind or humankind is actually part of the natural world. And so essentially, the discussion I'm hearing is we're somehow separate from it. We're somehow, inverted commas, capable of being better.
Well,
And
we have the capacity to to think
we've got
critically
capacity to rationalize. But then again, our capacity is probably limited. It's probably,
of course.
It's more than a worm, say, but it's. But then
out of all the species, we have the most, though, right?
And just listening to the conversation,
on this planet.
I just can't help thinking it's, from my point of view, it's hugely dualistic. It's, we somehow are separating, in the conversation I'm hearing, we're separating ourselves from...
Let's make this clear. Let's make this clear right now. We are above the animals on certain levels. In other ways,
no, we're not.
We're completely dependent on certain natural systems and certain life forms. We are above them on certain levels. In other ways, animals are better at things than we are. So what we're talking about is an advancement in terms of our consciousness, in terms of self-awareness, not necessarily in terms of value, not at all.
No other animal is debating on the internet right now. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. But then again, I don't.
Well, I'm not sure if I agree with you or if I disagree, because it sounds like you're agreeing with me, but then you're still saying that we shouldn't see ourselves as separate from nature. But that's my whole spiel.
Separate from nature.
We
shouldn't see ourselves higher or better. I've got my carbon atoms and my hydrogen and oxygen atoms have gone through the same evolution.
I agree.
Every other carbon and hydrogen atom.
I agree. So that we don't fall into sort of this abstract over philosophizing that's irrelevant. What's our relevant? What is our contribution to this experience? Like if we have we have in the past 150 years, we've changed the face of this planet, man. Like we have power. Now, if that power can be used for good or for evil, it's totally up to us. But we have power, and that shouldn't be denied.
We are better at thinking critically. Birds are better at flying. Eagles are better at seeing. So all animals are better at certain things than other animals. It's just a fact that we're better than animals at certain things, and one of them is being concerned about other animals, for example.
Sure. We have a greater awareness of the whole. Yeah. Where animals are very narrow-minded and they do everything they do based on instinct and everything.
All right. I got to just as a brief aside, there is a great level of guesswork in this because basically, like these animals, they can't communicate to us what is in their mind. So in other words, they may have a profoundly more compassionate sense of other animals than we do. And how do we ever know?
George, listen, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, at the same time, no, we understand pretty much how animals' minds work and like where their focus and attention is. And it doesn't mean that it should be devalued. Yeah, you guys know I'm an animal lover and I absolutely put animals above myself at times. So that's not the issue. It's that we're just trying to say that human beings can make the most impact now, whether it's for good or for bad. Human beings are the most influential at this point in time. So we have that, and that only means that we have a greater responsibility to do good and to be good stewards of the planet. We are not separate from nature, but we are the highest evolved in terms of our cognitive abilities, in terms of our intellectual capacity to reason and think and ruminate and dream and plan and vision.
The most successful species is bacteria. I mean, by far, we have.
Let's talk about if we're speaking of on how to proliferate. If we're speaking on how to proliferate and how to spread and how to sort of reproduce. Yeah, bacteria or cockroaches.
It's actually I agree with George. He's absolutely right. Those bacteria have shaped us to be what we are.
I was about to say though, but how do you define in terms of success? What is success?
I'm saying bacteria have shaped us.
Exactly. Yuri's point is bacteria are controlling us. We're not controlling them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. And here's the interesting thing about it. Now, of course, I would agree with George's point earlier that we can't know what's going on in the minds of all the other animals to say when it comes to critical thinking or ethical reasoning or whatever it may be, we can't really say that humans are superior for certain than all the other animals on the planet. But a much larger point is that humans, at least some of us, not all of us certainly, have this ability to think about things and think, oh, no, I don't want to eat animals. I don't want to cause them pain, so I'll eat plants instead. Or, oh, it's better for me not to reproduce because that will prevent suffering. That's an ability that some of us humans have, which is a very good ability to have, and that's the only sign of hope for us at all.
I agree. I absolutely agree, Chandler. And so, again, you're reiterating my point, but it just all comes back to what is most proficient, what brings about the greatest level of success and sustainability and allows us to thrive and function with a higher quality of life. And again, animals, let me play devil's advocate and go ahead and I'll take your side for a second. They react so fast and they have such quick reaction times. They have almost a precognition and they're able to respond to stimulus in their environment. The way cats move, the way how eagles can see movement, how certain nocturnal animals can see in the dark. So they have levels of intelligence that we've never developed, and they're much more efficient at survival and certain aspects of survival. But again, it's just different. It's just human beings we've ceased evolving in a sense. We've slowed down evolving physically, and we've evolved our brain capacity. Our brains have evolved to greater levels of consciousness and awareness. And I wanted to say that the primates, the great apes, and cetaceans, dolphins and whales, and then gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, and chimps all have the fundamental the bare beginnings of ethics and morality, because they behave altruistically at times. They seem to to exhibit these aspects that we possess. And I just watched a video as a story on how humpback whales will protect seals for no other reason, and they'll protect them from orcas, from killer whales, and they'll shield them and stuff like that. And many dolphins have saved surfers and swimmers from sharks at times. So I believe that the great apes, the primates, and the cetaceans, if given enough time and they're successful enough, will develop these same qualities of this level of consciousness that we've achieved. The potential is there, is what I'm saying. But in the other animals,
we're making a statement about their quote unquote level of consciousness, and they can't communicate that to us. In other words, we can't communicate that to them.
And let's go beyond that, George. Let's point out that none of us can truly communicate our brain states, our consciousness, to even other humans, because we're limited by these words we have to use, which never fully express another person's thoughts.
Sure. I mean, that kind of goes back to Juris' point about language, that we really need to reevaluate our language systems.
I think the other thing is, I think we need to be a lot more critical. Or at least there needs to be a lot more critical thinking about what is and is not consciousness, because
it's a whole other show there. That's
one.
I mean, I'll make a statement really quick, and if you just give me a minute, I believe that all life is conscious on a certain level, but there are many different, there's a gradation. There's levels of awareness, sentience, sapience, consciousness, like that. I believe even plants have an awareness, and they're conscious on a certain level, but you wouldn't call that the same as the ability to sort of deliberate and ruminate and think and reason. Obviously,
all right, here's my take.
Higher mammals have that.
Since we don't have a free will, our consciousness and our thoughts are not our own. So in other words, the thoughts and consciousness of other animals are not their own. So basically, we're talking about the thoughts of consciousness of this being, entity, whatever, that
of
really
nature
isn't
itself.
us.
Sure, of nature itself. Nature itself has this capacity that on all these many different levels, it is developing consciousness in a progressive way. I agree, George.
I'm talking more about a kind of like a governing consciousness that's, I'm talking about like theologically God, or naturalistically, a consciousness that pervades the universe, created the known universe, existed before it, and is just like, it's like we're all in a play, that basically it is the consciousness and we are kind of just manifesting its consciousness.
Or we could just say that our consciousness evolved over a long period of time and there wasn't anything prior to our consciousness evolving.
I agree with both of you, because
well, yeah, absolutely, but that doesn't.
Can I offer something? Can I offer a reconciliation between these two points of view? Because what you have is a materialist atheist, and you have a pantheist or a panentheist here. So,
no, actually, I'm theological. Yeah. I'm a deist. I'm a
theist,
actually.
Okay, even further into the well, George. I mean, if you look up in the literature, I mean, that's panentheism. You believe that God is the universe, nature is the manifestation of God, but there is more to God outside of the physical realm, that there is this higher overarching consciousness.
No, I don't believe that. I believe God is everything. I believe God, the universe is God. They're synonymous.
Right.
But the reason I call myself a theist.
That's the pantheist aspect.
That's pantheism. But for example, like Spinoza didn't believe that God. Spinoza believed that God was all good. Einstein, another pantheist, didn't believe in a personal God, that God was a being. So in other words, like, I'm a theist more than a pantheist.
Okay, so you're saying real quick.
We're going to have a session on terminology one day.
You don't. So real quick, George, you're saying that you don't agree with Spinoza and Einstein? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I believe that God is both good and evil, and that God is a quote unquote personality. God is a being. God happens to be the entirety of reality, but that's a being. That's, as opposed to not having.
Yeah, that's panentheism. And it dips into panpsychism.
It's also standard theology. God being, omnipresent, omniscient.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, this is a different topic. We were talking about levels of consciousness and like a gradation. What you have here, you have deism, pantheism, agnosticism, and atheism. And actually, everyone on this panel right now represents like one of those. We're actually on those levels. But what I'm trying to offer you guys is a synthesis to help understand this. If we have time, if you can grok this, George, you're not wrong, and Trick, you're not wrong. If you look at the chronology of it, then there is a way that these two models are not incongruent. They actually can form a synthesis. But I don't know how much time we got. Where we guys? Yeah. To be continued. Sure.
Try to do it on Skype if you can instead of Google Plus, because like on my iPad, Google Plus doesn't work that well.
We could. Yeah, we could. There's no reason why we couldn't do it this way.
Right, yeah, because we just use the audio for Poffo's show anyway when we do that. So anyway, I think this has actually been a very good show, because we were talking about these various methods by which we want to make the world a better place, which is the top priority, which is most effective, which is practical. And these are all really good things to talk about. And I think what it all comes down to is we're all right, but this is like the three blind men and an elephant, except wait a minute, there's like 5 of us, isn't there?
I don't think Trick believes that we're all right, and I don't believe we're all right. Trick, what do you say?
I think there's some disagreements, but there's certainly some different. I mean, I'm not talking about the pantheist,
which is all right.
I'm talking about just on the moral scale. So
I would say we're coming at it from different perspectives, and if we could reason this stuff out, like I said, in a diplomatic way, and kind of present the theories. I think there's a way that they can be reconciled.
Yeah,
sure.
I really think we are basically like 5 blind men and an elephant is what's going on. We're describing different aspects of something. We're describing different avenues for something, and we have different perspectives on things. But I think we can still work unite with this. Like, I think there's got to be some way to reconcile it into one.
Well, absolutely. We have a
We're
lot.
close
We
enough.
have a lot
We're
in
close enough
common.
on a lot of things that we could
Hey, the elephant is alive and it's an animal.
Yeah, we could agree on that, right?
It's a biological organism, and that's where I stand.
Yeah,
So,
although we may
yeah.
disagree on how conscious it is. That's another whole show right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Plants are not conscious, in my opinion.
Oh man, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I guess I better close this. So, was there anything else we need to say really quickly before I wrap this up?
Yep, my wife's cooking some really nice lamb, guys.
You had to
The
say
red
that.
wine's going to go well with it.
My girlfriend made a nice Buddha bowl that I'm gonna eat if she didn't eat it all already. But she made a nice Buddha bowl tonight. You gotta check it out.
Yeah, well, my mom makes vegan pizza, so that's good. Anyway, yeah, so we've talked about just about everything and more, and I really don't know how to close this out, really, but you listened to it, and I hope you enjoyed and that we can all find common ground and work together on where we agree rather than these disagreements. So thank you for listening and goodbye.